Good evening, and welcome to Wide Angle. I'm Brendan Fallon. Apart from the US election, the hottest international issue at the moment is the global spread of the pandemic. So today we're going to discuss two topics. The first is the new virus strain that's attacked Europe and Africa, signaling the return of a global pandemic storm. Then secondly, we're going to look at President Trump's denial of martial law. Has the military option been abandoned? Before we get started, if you like our channel, please remember to like and subscribe. Now, regarding the pandemic, in recent days, the world's eyes have turned to the UK, where there's been an upsurge in coronavirus cases, causing international concern. On Monday, 21st December, the US Dow Jones Index opened down more than 300 points, and European stocks also plunged, while gold and crude oil prices fell at the same time. The main cause of this wave of international panic was not only the rise of the outbreak in the UK, but more importantly, the emergence of a mutated or variant of the CCP virus in the UK, which has caused a rapid increase in the domestic outbreak. According to Prime Minister Johnson, the variant, may be up to 70% more transmissible than the old variant, the original version of the disease, and is driving the rapid spread of infections in London and in the southern area of the UK. In fact, the variant of the virus first appeared in the UK in September, but in December infections had increased significantly, with about 3/4 of new cases confirmed to be infected with the variant. The virus has forced Ireland, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Hong Kong to announce an emergency ban on flights to and from the UK. The total number of confirmed cases in the UK is now more than 2 million, and the number of deaths is more than 67,000. However, the more troubling thing is that this variant of the virus in the UK has spread to other countries. This variant of the virus has emerged in countries including Denmark, the Netherlands, Australia, Italy, and South Africa, and the new virus is rapidly pushing up the number of confirmed cases in South Africa. France's health minister has said it is entirely possible the mutated COVID-19 strain identified in parts of England is already spreading in France. It is worth mentioning that the French President, Macron, was also confirmed infected recently and is still undergoing quarantine treatment. Not only is the outbreak in Europe highly alarming, but the recent outbreak in China has also intensified significantly, as the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has from the beginning of the pandemic been mobilizing its power across the nation to impose a strict speech blackout and public opinion surveillance. The truth about the pandemic has been completely blocked, and it is difficult to obtain real data. However, there's still clues to China's true situation in recent official reports and statements. According to the data from the CCP's Health Commission, there's been an increasing number of confirmed cases across China recently, including Heilongjiang, Liaoning, Inner Mongolia, Guangdong, Chengdu, Tianjin, and Shanghai. Now, there is another lockdown in Jinzhou District, Dalian City, and over 10 schools have been closed. Zhongnan Shen, an academician of the Chinese Academy of Engineering, jumped down again with a fresh claim that the current pandemic in China is being environmentally spread. He said that there are two major COVID-19 challenges in China now. One is imported cases, and the other is the spread of COVID-19 through the environment, such as on food packaging. So the people of China infected with the virus are not passing it on to others? Where did the viruses in the environment come from? So all the cases of the virus came from other countries? How come there's been no environmental spread of the virus reported in other countries? Maybe we should stop questioning and just trust in the supreme capability of the Chinese Communist Party. In all seriousness though, Zhongnan Shan's new claim that the pandemic is environmentally transmitted likely means that the transmission channels of the pandemic in China are already quite extensive, and more infected people do not have a history of coming back from abroad or having had contact with returnees. And so it's difficult for the CCP to blame the pandemic on foreign countries or imported cases. Reading between the lines, we can also infer that the virus in various parts of China may be spreading very fast, exceeding official expectations. It is becoming more and more difficult for the government to stabilize digitally, meaning maintain stability by using digital surveillance systems. The pandemic may now be too hard for them to cover up, so they deployed Zhongnan Shan to lead public opinion in advance. On the one hand, under the name of environmental spread, the responsibility of official cover-up and ineffective pandemic prevention has been passed on to the environment. On the other hand, their managing of the public's expectation for the more and more confirmed cases that may emerge in the future. Coincidentally, Zheng Guan, a member of the high-level expert panel of CCP's National Health Commission, also leaked at a symposium on December 19th that, quote, China is already experiencing frequent and multiple outbreaks, and if it develops further, This is a public health problem that needs to be taken seriously. Zheng Guan's speech basically echoed our analysis. So the pandemic in China should not be underestimated, and it may grow in an explosive manner at any time, especially in January and February next year, around the period of the Chinese New Year. The spread of the pandemic may be accelerated due to a large number of people returning to their hometowns and traveling to different places. If you have people in China, or who have a need to travel there, please make them aware of the situation. With the risk of the pandemic increasing in Europe, Africa, and China, and with the US pandemic remaining at a high level, the world well may be facing an unprecedentedly severe pandemic storm in the not-too-distant future. To make things worse, and we've been told by medical professionals, some vaccines may still pose a risk even though they have been introduced by pharmaceutical companies in several countries. While we don't try to dissuade people from using vaccines, we certainly don't advocate them. The reason being that with normal vaccine development and testing, it usually takes 2 to 3 years of phase 3 clinical trials for the treatment to be considered safe. Yet it's only been a year since the outbreak of this pandemic, so it's reasonable for there to be concerns about the quality of a vaccine launched in such a short period of time. As a result, more than 87,000 frontline nurses in the Netherlands refused the vaccine because they did not want to be guinea pigs in the vaccine trials. As medical professionals, these nurses know the potential risks of rushing a vaccine. In addition, it was just recently announced that 6 people died during clinical trials of the coronavirus vaccine produced by the American pharmaceutical company Pfizer and the German BioNTech company. The cause of death is still under investigation. Also, another important factor is that the virus mutates so quickly that the vaccine may not be effective after mutation. Therefore, the unstable quality of the vaccine and the rapid mutation of the virus are 2 major problems in the pandemic prevention. Then if the resurgent scale of the pandemic continues to expand and becomes out of control, this is likely to have several significant effects. The first effect is that the economies of China and the world would fall into recession again. Economies across the world are currently in recession, having been hit hard by the pandemic this year. Of course, China claims to be the one country with positive economic growth. However, as we talked about in our previous China-focused episode, if you look past the fabricated data pumped out by the Chinese Communist Party, the real economic situation in China is less than healthy. If another wave comes back early next year, and if it comes back even more ferociously than before, the economies of the world and China will certainly hit rock bottom again. The second severe effect would be upon the Chinese regime itself. If China's economy is badly hit again, it's likely to be accompanied by an explosion of unemployment and debt. This could result in systemic financial crisis, threatening Chinese people's livelihoods and safety. If the people of China are unable to carry out their lives, it could push public discontent to a tipping point of mass resistance against the Chinese Communist Party. That's already factional infighting within the CCP. The combined impact of these forces of conflict could potentially push the CCP towards collapse, which I'm just saying may not be the worst possible thing for the world. The third effect is that there could be a serious shortage of food supplies. As we've said a few times on this program, this year China has been affected by the pandemic, floods, pests, extreme weather, and official corruption, resulting in a major shortage of food production. Therefore, the Chinese government is drastically searching for food from South America, North America, India, Myanmar, and other places. However, if a severe pandemic occurs early next year, just the same as this year, it will certainly affect the spring plowing. People will be locked down with only the ability to consume food instead of producing. This will aggravate the imbalance of food supply and demand in China, causing severe food shortage. Chinese people in particular need to be aware of this and making whatever preparations that they can. So to reiterate, if there's another spike in the pandemic early next year, we can expect to see likely effects. Firstly, the economies and employment of China and the world may fall into severe recession again. Effect number 2 is that a severe setback to the Chinese economy could trigger debt crisis, leading to systemic financial crisis, which would pose a serious threat to the Chinese communist regime. Effect 3 is that a pandemic spike would not just affect spring plowing next year, it would cause an imbalance in food supply and demand, causing a food shortage crisis. Naturally, the last thing we want to see is further pandemic crisis inflicted upon the world. But we need to be aware of the warning signs, stay alert, and make sensible preparations. Let's take a moment to break down a poignant political cartoon from Xianci. On the right here, we have certain individuals sitting on a tree trunk, peering through a telescope, who is none other than the accelerator-in-chief, the name given by the Chinese to the guy expected to most rapidly accelerate the downfall of the Chinese Communist Party, none other than Xi Jinping. He's peering across at the famous landmarks in the United States and other countries around the world, including Notre Dame in Paris and Big Ben in London. Fittingly, we can see the landmarks are all tied up by the roots of the tree he's sitting on. This suggests that the Chinese Communist Party has kidnapped Western countries through various means of infiltration, such as bribery and espionage. Then at the bottom of the picture, holding a mega chainsaw, is President Trump, so close to taking out the old, diseased trunk of the Chinese Communist Party. Will he get to finish the job? We should know pretty soon. Our next topic is Trump's denial of martial law. Is the military option abandoned? Many people are wondering if President Trump's potential use of presidential prerogative power, which we've looked at extensively in earlier episodes, is off the table. Under this provision, he could declare martial law and mobilize the military to investigate the election fraud and coup. We've talked about various signals that the president was seriously considering this option. But how is that looking now? Well, last Friday, December 18th, President Trump met with Defense Secretary Chris Miller in the afternoon. In the evening, the president met with attorneys Sidney Powell, General Flynn, and several key staff members at the White House. According to Politico, the meeting mainly discussed whether to appoint Powell as a special counsel to investigate the election fraud. In addition, the leftist media reported that according to two White House insiders, the meeting also discussed whether to declare martial law to deal with the current situation. This apparently triggered a heated exchange of views among the staff. However, President Trump's attitude toward the idea was unclear at the time. However, after the news was disclosed by the leftist media, President Trump tweeted early in the morning on December 20th and denied that they discussed the issue of martial law, emphasizing that the discussion on martial law is fake news. In other words, President Trump openly denied that he was considering using martial law. Later, attorney Sidney Powell also denounced the media reports on Twitter. She said, quote, "There was no discussion of a military coup by President Trump or anyone on his behalf." Powell emphasized that the president is a law-abiding patriot and that the only coup is that by the Chinese Communist Party and all the people that it has bought. General Flynn, who was also present at the meeting, retweeted Powell's remarks, endorsing them as true. Naturally, the Trump camp rejected the leftist media's labeling of martial law as a coup. After all, a coup is illegal, while martial law is one of the legal powers of the president. So Powell and Flynn emphasized that President Trump is, quote, a law-abiding patriot who wouldn't do something illegal such as launch a, quote, military coup. However, they didn't specifically reject the possibility of the president declaring martial law. On the other hand, President Trump himself said, by tweeting directly, that martial law, quote, equals fake news. He did not say that the coup, that is the massive operation by the deep and foreign powers to compromise America's election and constitutional law, is fake news. At first glance, it looks like he's rejected the military option of martial law. But who's to say what's really going on in that military general strategically geared mind of America's 45th president? To consider the other side of the coin, there are at least three compelling reasons why President Trump wouldn't go down the martial law route. The first reason is that President Trump may have missed the best time to act, allowing his rivals to launch their defense. We've explored the signs before that President Trump has been systematically laying the groundwork for 2 years, including his 2018 declaration of national emergency to prevent foreign powers from intervening in the election. Accordingly, President Trump could have the power to declare martial law. It's reasonable to infer that President Trump was aware that there'd be fraud in the election and was exploring the military response option. However, President Trump has not taken any major action since the election. To put it metaphorically, it could be like a fisherman who long ago cast his net but hasn't got around to scooping it in. This gave his opponents time for self-defense and countermeasure. Now they've triggered public pressure against President Trump via the media, saying that if he declares martial law, it would be a coup, which in turn undercuts his ability to act. The second reason may be the opposition from the military chiefs and the White House staff. Soon after the mainstream media launched into overdrive reporting on Trump supposedly considering martial law, we had the Secretary of the Army Chief of Staff, and others come out and issue statements stressing that the military will not intervene in the election and will not play any role. Although President Trump may have the support of the 82nd Airborne Division and the Army's 305th Military Intelligence Battalion, the lack of support from the Army's top brass may effectively hamstring prospects of President Trump's execution of such a plan. The third reason may be that President Trump himself, after deep contemplation, has opted to maintain the existing democracy and law system in the United States and rely on existing procedures to wage legal and congressional battles. In this way, the more controversial military option to take on the deep in Washington is avoided, also avoiding social chaos and casualties, as well as criticisms from the international community. Of course, we're roaming heavily into speculation territory here. Time will very well soon tell what the president's ultimate choice of action is. It's fairly clear, though, that he will continue to advance the legal and congressional battle. President Trump announced on December 21st that there's big news that had come from Pennsylvania. referring to a very large number of illegal votes that were identified from Pennsylvania. However, will this big news, this new development, make it to the Supreme Court? How will it affect the election lawsuit? At the end of the day, regardless of what President Trump's final choice is or what the outcome of the election is, we're not in the business of pushing a particular party or candidate. We're principally about endorsing values that are at the core of American tradition, like truth, justice, and having a conscience and being morally responsible. We support President Trump because he more or less aligns with these principles, far more so than the alternative. In fact, in many ways, and in his actions, as president, he's overtly worked to defend these principles. If tradition and virtue are at the core of the person leading this country, that's a good thing for America and ultimately the world. In the time ahead, we'll all be watching intently, no doubt, to see how President Trump has chosen to deal with the hijacking of this election. At the same time, the ups and downs and intrigues that unfold in the process are an opportunity for everyone in the US and the world to exercise their judgment over whose stance and behavior is right and whose is wrong, and to settle for themselves in their hearts what is good and what is evil. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our episode. Please remember to